Okay, last podcast where I'm going to look a little bit. I'm going to go more into it in the toolkit course 2, because that's going to be enormously important when we talk about working as change makers. We can do it as individuals. When we talk about changing reality as change makers, yes, as individuals, you stand sovereign in your transformative energy system. You know how to transform your inner map, your inner world map, and you are able to create patterns of change. And many of you will say, what are these patterns of change? Well, I've talked about it in the earlier levels of this material, and I'll go into in the next course material there, giving a kind of recipe of how to, as it looks now, and then that must be developed, because everything must be in process. Nothing is ever the same once we begin to work with holographic energy, because as we work with energy and we work with reality, we change our own energy system and our own components and the code systems. And by that, we feed back into the outer reality, which then loops back into us. So we are constantly in an exchange rate between ourselves and reality when we work as change makers. If we choose to work as a project with reality, then technically, I said with reality, then technically reality becomes our counter. So if you choose as an individual saying, oh, I'm going to stand as a soul trader, put it that way, or a soul change maker working with a reality project, as I did for a long time with the whole academy, then my project became my counter. There I played ping pong with my project to make reality. I kind of went in and created jurisdiction and created the ideas and the architecture and the thought forms, taking a little bit from the past and looking into the future. And from time to time, I had to align myself with the different groups that were here, because when you work with reality, you can't work on your own. You must always factor in who else is there. There's always the others, right? That's the 2-8 pillar work. So if you haven't got any of your original lineage, well, then you are forced to collaborate with who's there, not in a close, tight connection, not as a counter, because they operate in different ways, but then as an opposition. And these are some of the things of patterns of change if you choose to be a soul change maker. And I'm going to call it the soul change maker and the single change maker and the double or the partner change makers, because they will have a larger impact. They will really go in and push reality to a new level. But it depends on if the two females that go together, well, then it will technically, unless one of the females have a very high masculine rate in her, but then she's this weird, let me put it this way, the way that we change reality, the best way is actually if one chooses to, let's just say it, we just use that terminology right now. Instead of me saying one chooses to be principle 2, 4, 6, all of the equal numbers, and one chooses to be all the unequal numbers, and or one chooses to be the order, balance, and harmony, or the OBH, and another one chooses to be the CDT. Well, that's just going to be too complex. We'll completely lose track of that one. So we'll just say, yes, one will choose to be female and one will choose to be male in their energy system composition. So what does that technically mean? Does it mean that the females choose to be more Pleiadian, less Syrian? No, not at all. There are absolutely complete purified female lineages within the Syrian system as well. We had some of the old Egyptian goddesses that were purely feminine, such as Sothis. But are they then choosing to be male? Should males then be purified, purely male, as we understand? That's why I'm a little bit reluctant using that. No, because that doesn't fit the solar male. So we have a terminology issue there, people. I need to invent something. But the stronger we stand in, for instance, saying, well, I choose to stand completely aligned with the D12 collective lineage original propositions and probabilities and what the D12 lineage was supposed to unfold in this reality. And another one say, well, I choose to be specialized within the counter of that D12, where we will then work with the order, balance, and harmony and chaos, diversity, and transformation, elevation dynamics within the different principles, and how we're going to combine these into trinities so we can transform the reality energies into fires. And then you have that I want to say male, but then I kind of fall back into the trap right there. But then you have one that the counter of the CDT, it should be that one, and the counter of the OBH. It doesn't work well because these are OBH is a kind of a brand for kitchen utilities, so that doesn't really work well, does it? Sorry, I haven't got the words for it yet. I'll figure that one out because I'm so reluctant with the male and female. We so easily run into the gender programs when we do that. But you have to have these two specific fire energy systems that technically once the transformative energy system really kicks on and gets into its fire position, then the Pleiadian, the Sirian genetics cease to exist. Because that's the whole point of it. Then they become solars. Then they become true human. And then it becomes a unified system that is just flaring up with different flames, transforming energy. So to put it that way, so the most powerful ones are the ones that work as teams or work together as a pair or a double or a couple that are working together to transform energy. Then you can really specialize. And by doing that, one will carry the D, for instance, the D14 collective as it were the original progression couples, and the other would carry the D13, which is why my brother went there. There's that attempt, and then he got lost there. And then I divorced him literally. I remember going to the council and asked to be disconnected because he had completely lost his way and he was dragging me down with him, which is something I'm still struggling with in different variations inside this reality as part of my undoing, which is when we talk about why did I even come back, many 1,000 reasons why that was, but there was still all of these connections points I had here that connected to him because we had made so many projects together where we had created the architecture specializing in the different flames, in the different ways of working with the construct and the construction technologies and creating architecture that would unfold that in really viable, enriched version of consciousness within the different collectives to unify them again at a later point in time. So you see, that's kind of where when the Trinity structures then divide and goes two separate ways in the Trinity version, then you have a break, then you have things that falls apart, then it decomposes. But if you kind of go when you reach the sixth dimension and you have these progression dynamics of two specialized souls that are working together, not twin flames, but they are working together, specializing themselves as advanced solar humans. Well, then you have that possibility that they can merge and separate, create fields and uncreate fields. They can stand sovereign because they have completed the fifth cycle. And in the sixth cycle, they can merge into larger spheres or they can divide into two pentagrams. And here we're talking upright, correct, functional pentagrams that are working with consciousness and energy in the right manner, because that's what the pentagram is all about. The pentagram, the programs of the pentagram, the 511 pillars, all about learning to stand sovereign and work with reality, following the rules and the principles and the laws in the right manner, so that at all levels, including our own energy system, 1-7 pillar, the work with others in the 2-8 pillar, the work with reality of the third cycle kind in the 3-9 pillar, transforming that into fire so everything is transformed and transmute, going into governance, taking all of that power, all of that energy into then how do we upgrade these constructions to their next potentials. And in 511, creating the architecture, the holographic blueprints, the developmental programs to push that further, put all that we have experienced into an actual program that will benefit the next group of collectors that passes through the construction, because you only elevate when you have taken the reality you're part of and lifted it to the next levels. You're not just lifting ourselves, we are also lifting the worlds we are part of, the constructions. And then once you have done that, well, then you begin to create the true version of life force. And that has nothing to do with what we're producing inside this reality, which we think is life force or chi or sexual energy or what have you. That's just just kinetic processes of the molecular state, as they're similar as the fusion processes or the fission processes more accurately. It's like fission, nuclear fission, where you are having the collapse of the crystal structure, and then once that collapses and the electron it has lifted itself up but collapsed back into the nucleus, then there is the kinetic outburst of energy. There's an excitement and a burst of energy, and then a lower state afterwards, which decomposes and decrystallizes the structure. But it's also what leads to its decay rate and creates residuals because it's the wrongful use of energy. So that's the even higher level, as in kind of when we say, well, as humanities in the future, those of us who are progression couples or do choose to team up as males and females, there is a process where we transform the sexual energies as a couple so that we don't have them later on, or they become something entirely else, whatever that is, because nobody has done it yet, so we don't really know. But it must definitely never end in sexual magic, never end in tantric sex, never end up in anything that goes with Kundalini yoga and the whole ideas that have been played with in the 70s and the 80s, which are part of the dark magic ways of using the female body to produce and connect and get energized, where the male gets energized by it and the female loses her potentials and she gets more and more distorted. So that's why the male again is using the female for his convenience, not just as an object for his desires, but they're actually as someone that is harnessing the energies of the female. So that's also important when we talk about progression couples, that the male must let go of all of his maleness as part of the third cycle that is absorbing and consuming energy, because it's connected to a void that is now pulling into the abyss. So therefore it will constantly consume energy, and he needs to transform everything. His Y chromosome must be changed into an X chromosome. Otherwise, he will always deplete his female. He will always demolish his female. So that's the whole idea with the Y chromosome, to ensure that the females on our planet will not live into the fifth cycle. So there you have taken the original progression couples and turned it into a devastation dynamics instead of being a progressive dynamic. But as individuals, you can work with your project as a soul change maker. You will have the ability to, as I did with the whole academy, you'll produce your own material. You can produce a product. You can definitely create an income, or you can work with the land. It would be there. If we talk about working with the land, it's better to do it as a team, because the land just demands a lot of different, like we're seeing it with plants. If you have a farm, you know that you can't continuously plant the same type of plant or vegetable on the soil. You must change it because it uses different forms of nutrients. Some plants use that type of nutrients from the soil, others use others, and sometimes you just have to let it be dormant for a while so it can recalibrate itself. So when we work with the land, it's always done as teams. So that's where when we talk about food, health, and environment, that's when we talk environment, well, that must be in teams, because then we're talking about larger portions of lands where different humans will work together to find that one out as a team. So that would be these hybrid projects. But when we talk about food and health, that's where individual traders can go in and create some kind of course material, some kind of idea of whether they will work with nutrients or food in variations, as in kind of new ways of working with recipes or what have you. We haven't seen the full complexity of that one yet. That's part of next year's work, where I'll play a little bit of ideas in the Changemaker News or the alternate project, of the food, health, and environment. In that the podcast over the year of 2023, I'll work with the different groups and say, okay, what can we, if you choose to have your own business within food, then what can you do there? If you choose to be within health, and health is the broad one, because health goes from psychology to actual physical exercise. So it has the full range there where everybody can do a lot of things in between, or all of the included, or all of above. So therefore we then have the what we eat to keep ourselves going, where we learn how to work with food in a new way, which we already touched ground within transition sciences. Then we have health, where we really begin to understand what a human actually is. And then we have environment, that will be our surroundings. If we choose to go into communities, how do we then do that? That's environment. So environment is not just about inventing technology, because the transformative school, so to speak, sorry about that, the transhuman agenda is already doing that. And they're taking over reality. So if we choose to go there, we will almost be forced into using technology. Nuts and bolts, right? So for us that are using within the alternate reality projects and hybrid projects, our focus must always be on the energetic level of it first, as part of changing our reality fields architecture, as we were supposed to as part of the fifth cycle. So whatever our projects will be, they must always be within the understanding this is to transform energy. It's not about profit. It's not about earning money. That's a side effect that's nice and neat. And yes, some of you might be billionaires by it. But if you at the same time transform energies that literally transform the reality field, well, then you are in balance with your billionaire status. It's not about we have to be humble and poor. No, it's about if we work with the original dynamics, as long as there is a trade system, well, technically, if you are creating a product that is for the highest good of the many, then with the original reality dynamics, I remember some of my older material, then you will get what you need, because reality itself will look and say, yay, you're working correctly. Here, more energy. Come on. I want to evolve too. Come on. Right? That's reality asking of you, please make me your counter. I'm dying here. Come on, literally. So that's that. Once that happens, and that's why it would be a good idea to get back into under the ancient ones, because there we will connect to the construction and the reality field itself that is more than eager to revive and come to life and play with me, because it's literally saying that. This is where when everybody say, yeah, God is love, right? No, reality fields are playing grounds. We play, we become like innocents, we become like children. You know, I'm sounding like the Gospels here, but there's a reason why that was said. We become like children. We go out and we are these children in a world of wonders where we can play with all of our creative ideas, because children are full of good ideas until they get ruined by society, right? So that's why we regain our innocence, and part of that understanding, yeah, that's the inner world we need to create first. That curious, investigative, faithful being that say, I can do this. And just block out all of the negative voices and all the ones that tells us what we can and cannot do. Just block them out. Just forget them. Better just to sit in your own meditation. Not that creates changes in reality, but at least that creates the energy system for it. That's the architectural beginning point to meditate and be creative and envision. What do I want to create? And then learn to manifest it. And those of you who go back to my older material, I there said, well, the first step most people need to learn to is to follow. When they need to pee, they go and pee. When they need to poop, they go and poo. When they're hungry, they eat. When they need to sleep, they sleep. Because that's the first basic step of taking the inner needs into an outer expression. Many are suppressing all of their inner needs and say, am I then just to go completely berserk and do whatever I want to do? No, of course not. Use your frontal lobes and a little bit kind of, what would be logical and rational and what would be the right thing to do here, right? So, but I taught all of that in the material, hence the enormous amount of time in that what's now become the free material, laying the foundation of, humans need to begin to take care of themselves again, nurture themselves in the right manners. So that could be part of the food, health, and environment too, because that's part of food and health. If we don't take care of ourselves and our own body and work with it correctly, we might have this fancy energy system, but if our body's falling apart, these two things are of course connected, but just to put it in sharp a dichotomy there as a kind of, you got this beautiful energy system, but your body's falling apart. Why is that? What is it that you haven't cleared out? What is connected to your molecular state? And that's why we're focusing on the reconfiguration, because it's important that we reconfigure. We create the transformative energy system, but it must be implemented into the physical form, because that's what the 1-7 pillar was about. So that's the foundational level to master. And then we are talking about the 2-8 pillar work, the first of many for the highest good of the many. That is the key of that one, where we go out and say, okay, I'm all pristine. I'm game. Woo-hoo-hoo. I'm there. Come on, play with me. Yes. And we have wrestled with reality, which is technically wrestling with our own energy system, because reality is a reflection of our own energy system, right? And then we recreated that one so that whenever we look inside, I get more and more of that, because I've been clearing out all the things that have connections point to the negative code streams in our reality, and get more and more aligned with the positive, what's left of them. Then the inner worlds of me become more like, it's like being part of a fairy tale in a way. And I had that as a kid. I remember having that. That's why I was always out in nature. And I have that still from time to time. I had that between 2013, or I had it back in 2007 and 8 and 9. And then when I was doing the healing work, I had all of these wondrous beings around me who say, oh, there's all astral. Yeah, it was. I know. So you say, are you back in the astral? No, now I'm in kind of the middle domain version of what is astral inside our reality. Remember, everything is a spectrum. It's connected. So yes, it can be astral, but it can also tie into the middle domain, shapeshifters and these type of beings that are what the ancient text calls deva, fairy, these type of elemental beings, what have you, which are unfortunately fragments of the timeline event. They used to be original civilizations that got fragmented and then recreated in a lesser version after the timeline event. So that's why they need to be released and let go of. But they are still magical, because they are the ones that keeps the last viability rate of the original system before the timeline event. Fragmented, yes, but it's still there. And they still create themselves as little wondrous beings. And I had many, many fantastic encounters with some of these beings throughout my journey. And they have helped me, because helping me, I'm helping them. So, and they can also be very, very naughty and vicious and all sorts of things. So there's nothing simple about anything. But just to go into that understanding of the complexity of a reality, as I ignite that innocence in me, then I can connect to these beings of innocence as well. And that it then amplifies my innocence. And then, of course, as I remember in 2009, was really working intensively with nature. I could get so buzzed by it that I completely lost my footing. I was just floating around as if I were high on something. So that's also to be understood that, yeah, this is not to be taken lightly. For those of us who choose to work with the environment, we will work with what's left of these nature beings that used to be original planetary beings from other systems that got caught in our system due to the timeline event. So we always have that in mind. That's not just about working with these as in the Finhorn garden so that we can produce plants. No, plants are to transform energy of a reality field out of the timeline event, and whatever's stuck there must be released. And that's our work as a releaser, as a healer within the environmental structures that we are creating as a community. But there are many, many possibilities. But first and foremost, we can only get there if people are capable of holding the flames in their transformative energies. And that's the radiation level must be activated into the vibrational level. That's the only way we can keep all of the darkness outside our field, as we constantly flame out, and by that decomposes everything that comes into our field. So vibration itself does not cut it. So people that are just doing the love and light vibration will not have the strength in their mental levels, the radiation level of the fifth cycle. They must ignite the radiation level as well to be able to master the pentagram and stand sovereign and stand empowered in a circle of vibration and radiation energies, which then ignites and becomes the flame system, the flame energy system, where the transformative energy system becomes a complete unity of different core flows. So the main working area in the 2-8 pillar is the energy system on a racial level. And that's what I just told you here, where it turns into the flame body. That's the racial level. That's where you really begin to not only master who you are and work with others and reality and all of the different domains, but it all goes back to the lineages, because these are the ones we need to upgrade when it all comes down to it. What is cosmos? Cosmos is all of the rays of the lineages in different variations, in different realities that needs to be transformed. And the only thing that can transform the racial level is, first and foremost, you work with other groups of races, you work with other lineages, but it all comes down to work as teams to transform the cosmos we're part of. That is the core domain, inner domain, middle domain, and outer domain. There we need to work as teams, because you have got different groups in the core domain. That's mostly the construction itself, but there are a few beings that can go there. Then there are the inner domain, where you begin to have life forms as we understand of them. And then you have the middle domain, and then you have middle domain races, and you have the outer domain visitors that are there to discard their projects. So you say, well, where's actually the true life forms of every reality field in these universal cycles? That's the middle domain, because the inner domain is typically councils and the governmental level. So the government is in the inner domains. That's where you have all the councils and the ones that are kind of overseeing and working on the 511 and 612 pillars, so to speak, going into the core domains from time to time under the ancient ones and talking about the construction, talking with the holographic teaching system of the construction that we're part of. But the middle domain is where you have all of the ones that are working in teams as part of the pillar project, in different science projects, in different developmental projects, and whatever. That's the middle domain. And that's why when we talk about, is it just 3 dimensions? No. There's just 3 main groups of levels that we have been classified within our limited perception of things. Because if you go to the middle domains and you have that original energy system, there are no dimensions other than what is in your own energy system. So whatever you perceive will always be a reflection of who and what you are. So therefore, there are per definition no dimensions. There are per definition no sectors of reality, but there are versions, there are relative reality that matches who and what you are. So that's why we operate. Okay, so that's that understanding. And then we have the dynamics. So the dynamics that we are to focus on, that's kind of when we talk about we are in the 2-8 pillar. What are the dynamics we work with? Progression dynamics. What are they? They are within the root races, that are the different manifested forms within the middle domain. The lineages that takes its origin in the core domain, put in there by the collectives, dividing out to 12 different lineages that will then spread out from the core domain as part of the library into the inner domain, where we have the first foundational governmental structure. These are the ideas. That's the first teamwork, but they're always in contact with the next outer ring, which are the middle domain, where we have all of the different root races that are seated there, creating different projects and science projects or developmental projects or whatever. I don't have the word for it because we don't have it in our language, but there that is. And whatever happens in the middle domain then feedback loop into the inner domains and vice versa. So it's always interchangeably. Just because you are situated in the inner domains does not mean that you are then on top of the hill and you are the one that's not listening to the people or anything, because these are interchangeably. But we need, again, the specialization. We need someone that stands higher in energy and holds that type of energy so that everybody knows this is where we need to go. And then you have the ones out in the field, so to speak, working with the exemplification, and they need to be able to ping pong and bounce balls with the inner domain. And the inner domain can only hold its position as a sounding board and someone that can say, this is where we need to go. If someone is playing it out, so someone is showing them this is what we need to adjust to, so we develop the reality field, what is needed, keeping kind of the overview of the system. Not that they are leaders, because everybody's sovereign. So there's no leaders, but there's always someone who needs to have what you call project management facilitators. That would probably be more accurate. and to some degree mentors, which were a thing we invented for the humanoids or the laggards because they needed mentoring. But in the original worlds where everybody's working as equals, nobody needs to mentor anyone. There we have our specialization, and we can discuss our specialization. We can talk about our specialization. We can ping pong on our specialization, and we can have fun with it. And we can push each other in a loving, kind competition, right? So the guidelines are the rules of engagement, and I will not go into the rules of engagement here because I have touched them in the other material in context of what we understand on a personal level. Here we are shifting into, okay, if we are to work with reality and other races as part of the 2-8 pillar, what does the rules of engagement then actually mean? But I want to put that into the course material too, because there I will work more in depth with that, having laid the foundation of the pillar work here, so we can then move into say, okay, we now understand that these are the dynamics we work under, and we work under the rules of engagement when we work with others. So what does that mean in terms of our hybrid projects? What does that mean when we are moving from being a sole trader into going into partnerships under the food, health, and environment? So we both have what can we do as an individual as part of the alternate reality project for 2023, but what can we do as partnerships, and what does that imply if we want to do that, understanding the original reality dynamics. So the interacting mechanisms, that's the kind of where we work with each other, we interact with each other, and we interfere with each other, and we amplify each other. And that's the between what we understand as local, global, and systemic progressive energy, where we use the rules, the lineage we come from, our original capacities, the root race we were seeded into in the middle domain, and the project that we are in or used to be within. So that's that understanding. It's kind of picking up where we took off in the middle domains before everything went a little bit south and we got pushed out here, the outer domain where we technically don't belong. But we are here to clean up our mess. So let's take that seriously, because we are now in an outer reality that shows us we need to clean up our mess, which is good, because 10 years ago, people were, no, well, it's fine. And nobody took responsibility for anything. Now we're being forced to by reality. You have fucked up your planet. Now you take responsibility. And that's a good place to be, because that is more accurate of what's going on in the middle domain and the inner domains, and our entire system is collapsing. It's going into complete chaos. So we need to, as chaos pilots, and having these social skills and that ability to work with energy, so that we first and foremost create order, balance, and harmony within ourselves, or one of the partners choose to have that strong, as I've chosen that one because that's where I become the light tower, right? I'm standing there in all the chaos energy and shining. This is where you need to go, and I stand my ground. But then there are all of the others that are I'm the representation of this is where you need to go. This is what you need to do. This is the architecture. And then you've got all of the others, all of you out there. You can choose to become that as well, but you can also choose to be the players that are interacting with reality, say, this is the architecture. How do we go out then and change the world as change makers? And you become, I'm just the kind of standing there. This is the pillar of knowledge you need to have. And all of you go out and become change makers in your own sovereign right, where you are empowered by your own understanding of things. And then when you lose your way, you look back into the material I've created, saying, oh yeah, now I get it. Yeah, back on track. I'm on top. And then you go out and you conquer the world, and you transform the energies, and you do what you need to do within your hybrid project. So that's the idea of all of it. And when we talk about in the light of the 2-8 pillar processes and what we work towards, we are also understanding that we are not losing sight of that. We're still clearing old world order regress density 2 genetics. And we're still clearing out old types of infected density 3 inserted genetics that are connected to our mental field. We will still be in distortion energies. And the whole transformative energy system is to maintain our inner map of the better world we want to create. And we will constantly be be pulled into negative counter chaos forces that will try to take that down, because they have this weird relationship with us being what we call in pristine state. In one way, they want us to be there, but at the same time, they don't know how to administer it, so they attack it. So they're both drawn by it as moth to a flame, but at the same time, they're also enormously attacking like a scorpion, because they really don't know how to respond to it. And that's why we need to get our flame body up and running the radiation energies, because then once they get to the moth to a flame, then they will sit. And that's what they should do, even though we kind of say, yeah, it's a little bit harsh, isn't it? Yeah, but not the moth, of course. But the moth is still connected to underworld energies anyway. So these are root races and shells and imprints and remaining distortion. Similar, we had the whole astral plane with all the fairies. They're technically, although they're beautiful and nice, it's sad. They used to be living beings that should be something else. Same with the underworld. They are just the dark version of it. That's just the polarity of that. It's still an effect of the timeline event. Still things that got stuck there. But they got dealt the card that was really bad, because they got connected too much to the third cycle energies, whereas the fairies or the devas were still able to keep some of their fifth cycle energies intact. But they used to be humans like you and me in an advanced civilization. So that's sad. Both of it is sad. But it's easier to feel that sadness with the fairies because they're beautiful beings if you don't get completely enticed by them and lose sight of what you need to do with them, because they have lost sight of who they are. So you need to remind them, yeah, you might find yourself in a beautiful little Tinkerbell body, but it's not what you're supposed to be, honey. You're supposed to be a 2-meter tall thing that is supposed to go out there and do this and that, whatever, and there's ding, wow, kind of thing. And then they're ready to go, because then they remember. And that's always the transformative process, when what is stuck here remembers who and what they are. That's the first step for complete healing, right? Because then you know what you are. You align with your root race. You align with your lineage. You align with who and what your own energy system, especially for someone like me that's been working with that for so long. So I have all of these different configurations. So by that, I become the counter in that, standing there, having their configuration so that they can just let go and then be pulled out into the restoration program, where they will continue their existence now with the correct configuration of whatever's left of it, these two little single viable genetics that will mostly come out of it. But the same goes with what we call what's stuck in the 2-8 pill of the negative side of it, and all the polarity forces that goes with after the timeline event. So all of that is this. It's just more difficult to have the what we call the compassion there. It's not always supposed to be compassion either, but that's a work for someone like me that's chosen to work with it. It's not for all. Those of you who are working with these levels, you normally knows how to deal with that. Most prefer to work with the devas, right? Much more fun, right? It at least gives a feel good, whereas the other side kind of makes you feel miserable, right? So we don't, who wants to work there, right? Okay. So we are also still when we work as change makers and we're creating these new maps inside of ourselves and the patterns of change, we are still up against different types of colonizing technology, at least for the next 9 years. And then we have all of the distortion fields, which I talked about, and energetic parasites from the 3 lower fields. So we need to reconfigure that one. If we are going to be functional change makers, we need to reconfigure into density 1, where we kind of let go of everything that is in our 3 lower fields and upgrade them to the flame body fields, where our biofield and emotional field and mental field becomes a radiation field, vibrational field, and the original code field, from where we can reconnect to the original probabilities of the outer domain and what we're supposed to do to enter the 5th cycle. So we do that to be able to function in the new reality density 1 heading towards the 2025 timeline. And we must also work with the psychic energetic transformation processes of the 3 lower fields in the lower order energy system, because what we are determines where we are in terms of original density energy, which I've talked about here in the 2 podcasts. What you are determines your inner map. the inner human that determines which code streams, which realities you connect to. And if you have regressed genetics there, you will connect to the regressed realities. It's all about energetic and genetic affinity. So if we are to say, no, I'm going on to the ancient ones, then we must align with them. And that's all the progression work that I've done so far, where I've talked about the principles and the rules and the laws, because these are the ones that were reconnected to the original density one under the ancient ones. Follow their guidelines, follow what the construction gives of information and holographic developmental programs and processes, not as part of the Pillar project, but we are now moving into the original construction, and it's going to be 10 times harder than it were on the Pillar project. But the rules are still the same, because the principles and the rules and the laws are part of the D14 collective, so that has not changed. And once we ignited this under the ancient ones, it was as the D14 collective, so it's seeded in already. And we must also understand that everything's interconnected. From the reality field energies to the energies of our higher and lower energy systems into the smallest unit found in the cellular construction. And we can work with that as change makers, but we also work with that as our part of our transformative energy system. And we also work in the understanding of the reconfiguration, where we begin to work with our cellular construction to be able to withstand the changes of our reality and not be consumed by the different programs that are now taking over our world from the quantum fields and inwardly, and completely will chew up everything and turn it into a transhuman agenda for years to come. And then they will go, and then what is left will collapse into the coldness and vastness of nothingness. When we work with one layer, we also work with the other intersecting energy fields on the levels of dimensions we work with. I've talked about that before. Here I give in a different perspective of it as an internal map. That is, the more advanced your map is, the more worlds you can perceive, and the more worlds you can perceive, the more expanded your perception field is, the more complex your internal map is. And that's weird to say. Yeah, we're always thinking, yeah, the stellar map is something we have from the outside. No, it's actually what's inside of you. It's your interior map that matters, that determines which level of consciousness and which type of energy you can work with. So again, the lower forms of energy we use, the smaller the changes will be due to the high distortion. And that's what I mean with, if you're just trying to, as a normal human, you want to be a change maker, then it's just like you're just taking it one table and move it into another room, because that's all you're changing. You are just shoveling crystalline manifested matter around. You're not really making any profound changes. You can, of course, work as a legislator or a psychologist, and there you begin to work with subtle energies. But to really change this world, we need to get up to the higher levels of the middle domain and impose that on the reality, because that's how we're supposed to be. That's the natural dynamics. Out here in the outer domain, that's where we discard things and where we have projects that we kind of a little bit, probably not a good thing to have in our own world. So we go out here and experiment, because then we can always push it into the abyss where we cease to exist. So that's also taking responsibility for our creations. When we begin to use the higher forms of energy, the changes become more noticeable, and they will become noticeable in subtle ways. And this is mostly, for most, it will be seen as shift in people, change in situations. We'll be drawn to new timelines. We will experience things a little bit differently. New possibilities will come our way. And that's part of the patterns of change, where we really begin to work with code streams as in understanding, one of the things with very skilled cunning skilled businessmen are they kind of say, my gut feeling tells me to do this now, whatever is a snake or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the idea is that you kind of have this ability to sense what's the trajectory of this timeline? Where is it going? What would be the right move? As I've been doing 10 years ago, I got the from within your business cannot be in a building, because it's going to be hard for you to sustain that one financially. So you make it on the internet. Your school is on the internet. Everything is kind of getting that one. Yeah, it might have been from the grades. Yeah, it might have been from someone and whatever. But this is part of it. And we have heard many scientists saying, oh, I got that as a vision. And yeah, that could be programmed. Yeah, that could be aliens. Yeah, that could be a snake. Yeah, it could be this and that, whatever. But we listen and then we discern, is it something we want to implement? Is it something we want to work with? So we kind of also, when I talked in the early material, in the free material, in the whole advanced classes, in whole advanced class 3, where I talk about choices, you look at the possibilities and you say which one has the highest viability rate, which are, they say, which one lights up, which one feels most right, and be careful with feeling, because that could just be a comfort zone that is triggering you there, a little elemental being, a little parasite. But when we look at things and saying, what is the right approach, then it's about, if you make a choice and you go into that pattern that it is, a choice is always embarking on a new pattern. Then if it reveals itself, it gives you what we call a higher progression rate. It gives you possibilities to transform. And sometimes this is really shitty. Sometimes you really need to transform something that's really dark and nasty. But that's also things that needs to be worked through. And it's enormously uncomfortable while you're in it. But once you get out on the other side and you have prevailed and you've done it, you see, whoa, that makes sense why I had to go through that. That was one of the most painful things. I just had one experience yesterday. I was dealing with a chaos demon for 24 hours and I was really, really trying hard not to follow what it wanted me to do. And I went the opposite direction, where I went into catharsis dynamics, where I cried heavy crying for an hour, where my heart broke over and over and over and over again. So I'm completely soul sore. That's a new expression I invented, because I'm okay in my body, but my soul is sore. It's completely dismantled and incoherent, and it needs to heal and needs to gather back up. It got completely scattered by that chaos demon, because that's what they do, break everything down. My heart felt broke, completely demolished. But I could have gone the other way and went all haywire and rampant, a warrior kind of thing, which were what chaos demons do. They are war demons. So I did the opposite and went into grief. And I grieved and I grieved and I grieved. And by that, I got it pushed out. So these are also the understanding, not that you want to do that, because remember, I work as a releaser, but these are the dynamics that we need to understand when we work with reality. What is the right approach here? What's the right dynamic? How do we address this? And in the beginning, we follow the principles. And then once we begin to work with reality, that's where mastery really comes in, when you know what's in front of you and you deal with it appropriately with the appropriate amount of energy and in a manner that is appropriate for what you're encountering. So you create the transformational processes. And that's what we do as change makers. Whatever comes our way, we do it to transform energy. If that leads to an income, then that's good. Then that's even more brilliant, right? Because then we can live by it and pay our bills by it. And that is the goal. Our goal is to become self-sufficient and not rely on others and not be contracted by others and not work for others. Because then we're not really sovereign, are we? So with that one, I will leave the rules of engagement to the course 2, where we'll work more with that in context of hybrid projects and as change makers, getting ready to bridge into the quote unquote business part. I'm not going to call it busyness, but the transformation of energy in hybrid projects, that if we do it right, we will earn an income by it. We will have put our mark on this reality. We will transform from inner to the outer. We will be part of the groups of humans that are now working to deal with the issues of our future. And by that, it will give so much more purpose and meaning to our energy work. Not only having worked with ourselves introspectively and creating a new type of human, but we are now then going out and getting ready to deal with what's out there in the world, with all the battles that will come from that, as you know, from the first, the skill sets of a change maker. So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be all the fun and what have you. That's what we need to remind each other of. And that's why it's good to have a counter or work as a team, but there we also become more vulnerable to our partners and our team if they are not up to speed with what we want to do. And sometimes it's easier to work as a sole change maker. And there we only have to play with ourselves and reality. But all depending on who we are and what we are and what suits our level of work, we will now begin to reconfigure, gather together where we kind of belongs, and then we will see how far we can push it. Because, I do have a dream of working in a community. I do have a dream of working with a lot of people in this project. And I've been trying to do that for 10 years. And that was part of my grieving, because it has not been a huge success so far, but I've not given up the hope of it, because we are the forerunners of a possible future. And no matter how much we fight all of these counter forces that are there trying to create chaos in a negative way, and it still leads to transformation. And it still leads to diversity of consciousness. But it also leads to scattering and destruction if it's not used in the right ways. And that's the problem with the D13 collective, right? That's the problem with the masters of the spatial energies, of which many have ended up in the underworlds because they have misused their power. They have misused energy. They might have been able to go up to the whole fifth principle, but they never mastered correct partnerships. They never mastered correct commitment. And they never mastered the correct use of energy, and they never mastered the correct use of power. That's where mastery kicks in. And that is what we want to achieve being a change maker as well, because we can master the first 5 principles as a sole change maker on our own. But if we really want to get out and get the full master label, get the certificate that we have dealt with this reality as it is and as it was and as it will become, then we need to get partnerships, commitment, energy, and correct use of power on top of it. And that's where the hybrid projects fit in. Thank you. See you in the next course, hopefully.